The popular narrative is, for most people, the minute they get any decent amount of money is to buy your first house. And that's what people do. They take a 10% deposit or a 20% deposit, whatever it might be, and they buy a house. Why is that a poor investment? Why is that a bad thing to do? Because that does kind of sit counter to the popular narrative.
Well, we have to remember, first of all, where the popular narrative came from. In America, if you ask people what is the American dream, the answer is inextricably tied up with a single family home with a white picket fence. That's not an accident. That is the result of decades of messaging. Some might call it propaganda. First of all, most people in the world do not live in single family homes like we do in America. That has caused a lot of issues. But to leave that part aside, this is how most people think about buying a house. They think, Grandma bought a house in Austin, Texas in 1970 for $100,000. Grandma just sold it 50 years later for $1 million. Grandma made $900,000. They go, it's the most profitable thing you could do, buy a house. I go, okay, that sounds really nice. Did Granny factor in how much she spent on maintenance for the past 50 years? No. Did Granny factor in inflation and how that affected her return? No. What's inflation? Did Granny factor in the opportunity costs of what that down payment could have been used if invested in the S&P 500? No. And did Granny look at all these phantom costs such as interest on the loan? No. It's not simply the bigger number minus the smaller number. That's wrong. That is simplistic. For the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to go deeper. Again, when I was living here, I kept a very close eye on real estate. And the place right next to me, same square footage, same number of bedrooms, same everything, it would have cost 2.2 times what I was paying in rent. So just to give you an example, if I was paying $3,000 a month, it would have cost about $6,400 a month to own. Okay. I said, you know what? I like renting. If I have a problem, I just text my landlord. I took the $3,400 I would have spent owning when factoring in phantom costs, maintenance, interest, taxes, all that, and I simply invested it. And I made more money doing that than I would have owning.
What about if you're buying somewhere for the rental income?
That can work. That can work. So owning real estate as an investment can be part of a well-diversified portfolio if you run the numbers. Right now, there's a lot of hype. People go, I'm going to buy a house, and if I don't like it or whatever, I'm just going to rent it out. Okay, fine. But you've got to remember that if your mortgage is $1,000, that's not just the amount you're paying. There's a lot more. In fact, in my estimations, I add 50% to that price. So $1,500 a month, which would include a roof repair happening 19 years from now. We've got to amortize that out. Labor costs, interest, all that. If you can rent it out and make a profit, fantastic. It cash flows, that's awesome. What you discover is that most people who buy a primary residence, the place they want to live in, they buy it because they want it, and then they tell themselves it's an investment. Buying a house can be an investment, but oftentimes it's not. And there are far better, far simpler investments. Here's my key message. I want to make sure nobody misunderstands me. I've been accused of saying buying a house is bad. No, I never said that. In fact, I will buy a house myself one day. And when I do, it's going to be a terrible financial decision, and I'm going to do it anyway. My key message is, for the biggest purchase of your life, you've got to run the numbers. Sometimes buying can be a good financial decision. Often renting can be a good financial decision. Run the numbers and never feel guilty for renting.